She never helped anyone. My stepmother Margaret's voice shrieked across the grand glass atrium of the Sterling Ridge estate, ringing out over the classical violin quartet performing for 50 city council members, high-ranking regional developers, and local news anchors. Look at her standing near the entrance in that stiff service jacket, pretending her little desk job in the armed forces gives her moral authority, while the rest of us actually bled to build this family's community foundation. I stood rigid beside the grand oak double doors in my dark blue Marine Corps service dress alpha uniform, my spine locked at attention, my right hand quietly resting inside my pocket, fingers gripping a cold, tarnished steel dog tag stamped with the designation Echo 99. In the center of the illuminated atrium, a 30-foot velvet banner read, "Honoring the Sterling Foundation, Citizen of the Year Award for Conrad Sterling." Beside Margaret was my younger stepbrother Conrad, looking sleek in a double-breasted tux, casually swirling a glass of aged bourbon, a subtle, victorious smirk playing on his lips. Beside him was my ex-fiancé, Nathan, who wore a customized gold watch I had purchased for him 4 years ago, a watch funded by my overseas combat hazard pay. "Margaret, stop," I said, keeping my voice dead flat, utilizing the measured, tactical cadence I had perfected during high-stakes logistics debriefings in Okinawa. I sent a priority legal summons to my base commander at 0600 hours claiming my biological father's medical conservatorship required an emergency biometric signature to sign his final care authorization papers. "I lied to force your pathetic presence into this room on live regional television," Margaret barked into the wireless microphone, her diamond bracelets glinting violently under the crystal chandeliers. "I wanted every municipal investor and mayor in this state to see what an ungrateful, parasitic fraud looks like. You spent 10 years hiding in overseas barracks, while Conrad and Nathan worked 90-hour weeks to expand our family's $40 million emergency relief logistics firm. Meanwhile, you refused to contribute a single dollar from your officer salary to support your own father's medical foundation." Nathan stepped up to the microphone, his face carved into an expression of mournful, calculated disappointment that made my stomach churn. "It's true, Samantha," announced Nathan to the quiet, attentive room. "Your psychological instability, paranoia, and endless bitterness toward your stepmother made a life together impossible. Conrad is building real community housing. You're just a bitter ghost who abandoned her family for a government paycheck." A sharp wave of hostile murmurs rippled across the room. Wealthy land developers shook their heads. A reporter from the City Gazette leaned forward, snapping rapid digital photos of my static posture. Conrad smirked, reaching into his jacket to pull out a golden pen, the exact pen my late father had used to sign my enlistment papers 10 years ago. "She doesn't even hold an active state security clearance anymore," my Aunt Beatrice chimed in from the front row, holding up a glass of Prosecco. "Security, drag this embarrassment out into the snow before she ruins Conrad's award ceremony." 2 heavy private security guards stepped rapidly from the shadow of the velvet curtains, closing in on my left and right flanks. But before their gloves could brush against my dress uniform sleeves, 4 heavy leather boots struck the marble floor near the rear foyer in perfect, terrifying synchronization. 4 tall men dressed in dark Marine Corps dress blue uniforms marched straight through the main entrance. Their brass buttons caught the sharp LED track lights, their white covers pristine, their eyes locked in dead-eyed tactical focus on the stage. The entire atrium fell into dead, suffocating silence. The 2 security guards halted instantly, their eyes widening as they recognized the silver insignia pinned to the front officer's collar. Gunnery Sergeant Frank Miller, flanked by 3 decorated active-duty Marines from the 1st Marine Logistics Group. Gunnery Sergeant Miller marched down the center aisle without wavering an inch. He walked past my aunt, past Nathan, and stopped 2 paces directly in front of me. He snapped his heels together with an echoing crack that rattled the crystal glassware, snapped a rigid, flawless salute, and held it. "Captain Samantha Sterling," Miller declared, his deep voice carrying through the quiet room like artillery. "Operational Directive Echo 99 is fully authorized by the Armed Forces Criminal Investigative Service and the Department of Housing and Urban Development. The floor is yours, ma'am." Margaret's microphone squeaked loudly as her hand jerked. Conrad's smug smile evaporated into a blank, frozen mask.
"Gunnery Sergeant Miller?" Margaret stuttered, her voice losing its polished polish. "This is a private civic celebration. Samantha is just a low-level supply clerk who was discharged for administrative incompetence." Miller didn't even turn his head. He remained standing at attention beside me as I took 3 deliberate, unhurried steps toward the center stage. I pulled the tarnished steel dog tag stamped Echo 99 from my pocket and held it up under the direct glare of the spotlight, the exact tag my biological father, Master Sergeant Thomas Sterling, had secretly pressed into my palm inside his VA hospital room 3 weeks before he slipped into a coma. "7 years ago," I said, my voice projecting across the room with razor-sharp clarity, "my stepmother and stepbrother informed me that Sterling Logistics was facing total bankruptcy, that Dad's specialized neuro-rehabilitation costs were $50,000 a month, and that if I didn't sign over my military power of attorney to Nathan, Dad would be evicted from his medical care facility." "Don't listen to her!" Conrad shouted, stepping to the front edge of the stage, his hands trembling slightly around his bourbon glass. "She's mentally unstable. She's suffering from deployment stress. She forged those claims." "I signed the military power of attorney," I continued, completely ignoring my stepbrother, as the crowd watched in mounting tension. "And for 84 consecutive months, $18,000 a month was automatically deducted from my combat hazard pay, my flight bonuses, and my officer pension trust. I lived in a bare, unheated apartment off base, wore worn civilian boots, and ate basic field rations, believing every single cent was keeping my father alive in a private medical suite in California." "It was!" Margaret shrieked, clutching her pearl necklace with pale knuckles. "Every cent went directly to his specialized medical team." "Then why," Gunnery Sergeant Miller spoke up, pulling a heavy blue federal dossier from his service portfolio, "does the Department of Veterans Affairs official database show that Master Sergeant Thomas Sterling was transferred to a fully federally funded VA medical center in San Diego 7 years ago, paid for entirely by his active military benefits?" The silence in the atrium was absolute. You could hear the hum of the air filtration system. Margaret froze like a statue, her mouth open, her face completely drained of color. "You lied to me for 7 years, Margaret," I said, my gaze locking onto hers with cold, unyielding authority. "You told me Dad was in strict medical quarantine, that visitors were restricted by hospital protocol. You sent me manufactured monthly progress reports stamped with a fake doctor's seal, just so you, Conrad, and Nathan could siphon over $1.5 million of my combat pay to fund Conrad's real estate firm and Nathan's luxury lifestyle." "Samantha," Nathan stammered, stepping back from Conrad, holding his hands up in a desperate gesture of innocence. "Samantha, please, listen to me. It wasn't my idea. Your stepmother told me you were deployed in classified operational zones and would never cross-reference local VA records. She said we needed the capital to keep the family brand alive." "You spineless snake!" Conrad screamed, turning around and shoving Nathan hard against the podium. "You were the one who authorized the offshore shell accounts. You forged my sister's signature on the municipal land transfers." "I forged them because your mother said she held full power of attorney," Nathan yelled back, his voice breaking into a panic as 50 city officials watched the 3 of them tear each other apart on stage. Before anyone could move, I walked over to the main audio-visual station beside the violin quartet. I inserted the steel tag, Echo 99, into the master USB terminal and entered my 9-digit security PIN. The giant 30-foot velvet banner behind them automatically unlatched and dropped to the marble floor, revealing a massive, high-definition LED screen that flickered to life. Instead of promotional reels for Conrad's Citizen of the Year award, the screen displayed a real-time federal audit ledger from the Department of Defense Inspector General, complete with bank routing trails, red federal seals, and decrypted wire transfers. Source account, Captain S. Sterling, Combat Hazard/Disability Trust. Destination account, Conrad Sterling Real Estate Holdings, Cayman Islands. Total stolen cons, $1,512,000. Classified municipal land permit, Echo 99, registered solely to Captain Samantha Sterling.
You told this room that Conrad built Sterling Ridge through business genius, I said, addressing the stunned city council members and reporters. Conrad didn't secure our city's emergency relief logistics contracts through merit. I cleared those routes using my active military logistics clearance during my deployment desk shifts. Nathan stole my digital credentials using the military power of attorney my stepmother manipulated me into signing while I was recovering from a shrapnel injury. "No, that permit belongs to the Sterling estate," Margaret screamed, her voice cracking into a desperate shriek. "A military power of attorney obtained through fraudulent medical representation is a federal felony, Mrs. Sterling," Miller stated coldly. At that exact moment, the heavy double-glass doors of the atrium burst open once more. 6 uniformed federal marshals, accompanied by special agents from the Armed Forces Criminal Investigative Service, marched down the aisle, their tactical boots striking the marble in synchronized rhythm. The lead federal agent walked straight up the stage steps, stopping directly between Margaret, Conrad, and Nathan. "Margaret Sterling, Conrad Sterling, Nathan Hayes," the agent announced firmly, his voice echoing off the glass ceiling. "You are under arrest for multi-year federal wire fraud, stolen military pension embezzlement, corporate identity theft, and unauthorized manipulation of classified defense logistics permits." "Get your hands off me!" Conrad shrieked as a marshal pulled his arms behind his back, the sharp, heavy click-click of steel handcuffs echoing through the silent room. "Do you know who I am? I am Conrad Sterling. I run this city's housing committee." "Your housing committee," he replied with absolute indifference, "was dissolved 2 hours ago following Captain Sterling's submission of sworn federal affidavits and forensic banking ledgers." Nathan offered zero resistance. He dropped to his knees on the stage floor, weeping hysterically as the officers cuffed his wrists behind his tuxedo jacket. Margaret gasped as her silk gown caught on the podium edge while she was led away, her social standing completely obliterated before every news camera and corporate investor in the state. "Samantha, stop them, please!" Margaret sobbed, her face contorted in frantic panic as she was hauled past me toward the exit. "We are your family. You can't let these people put your own stepmother and brother in prison." I stood straight, my shoulders back, my chin held high, looking at my stepmother with absolute, unshakable calm. "You said I never helped anyone, Margaret," I said, softly, my voice carrying into every quiet corner of the atrium. "And for the first time in my life, I agree with you. I'm not helping you anymore." As the federal marshals escorted Margaret, Conrad, and Nathan down the aisle past a crowd of horrified investors who were already pulling their funding contracts, Gunnery Sergeant Miller and the 3 Marines stepped up beside me. They didn't offer superficial comfort. They simply brought their heels together and rendered a synchronized, silent salute of profound military respect.
Slowly, every defense contractor, city official, and veteran in the room stood up from their tables, breaking into a roaring, rising standing ovation that echoed off the high glass roof, honoring the true officer who had stood her ground against absolute corruption. I held my head high, feeling the cold weight of truth, knowing that 7 years of manipulation had finally dissolved into the unshakable peace of earned justice. You cannot cure toxic family members by sacrificing your honor, your earnings, or your truth. For 7 long years, I allowed my stepfamily to manipulate my sense of duty, believing that my silent financial sacrifices were keeping my father alive and proving my worth to a family that never valued me. I let them insult my military service, belittle my achievements, and steal my combat pay because I foolishly believed that keeping the peace was worth any personal cost. But manipulative, greedy people do not view your patience as love. They view it as an invitation to exploit you further. They will steal your hard work, dismantle your self-worth, and attempt to publicly erase you, all while playing the victim when their deception is exposed to the world. Real peace does not come from quietly enduring abuse to protect people who harm you. Real peace comes from standing firm in your integrity, stepping into the light of truth, and allowing the unyielding consequences of their own choices to dismantle their lies. Never set yourself on fire to keep toxic people warm.